So the supreme concentration is not altering the mind. The Tibetan says Loma Chirpa, which has the idea of leaving the mind uncontrived, not. I think the idea he's trying to do, not altering the mind, means not trying to make the mind into something artificial, not trying to make it. What can I say? Make it something which is. We're trying to get back to our natural mind. That's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to build another mind on top of our ordinary mind. And so meditation isn't about mental gymnastics. It's about letting the mind... It's like if you have a pool of water and we've been stirring it around, and then all the mud and dirt and everything rises to the top and is swirling waves. So we're trying now just to settle it so that all of this just falls to the bottom and the mind becomes more clear, and we're not adding dyes to it, we're not adding detergents to it, we're not adding chemicals to the mind. We're allowing the mind to settle in its own place. Right? You understand? So it's very... We're not trying to alter the mind in the sense of contriving it into some weird shapes that we think is how it should be, a meditative mind. Genuine concentration is allowing the mind, as I keep saying, to relax, but stay attentive, stay focused. So we're not adding anything on to the mind. What we're just doing is allowing the mind just to settle down naturally. So therefore he says that the real concentration, not forcing our mind to do anything. We're not forcing the mind. Like some people think the idea of when we're learning to concentrate, you tense up and you really have to, no, I'm not going to think of anything except, the pebble or the breath or the Buddha image, or, yes, I'm going to look at the mind and every thought, zap, 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 zap. But it's not like that. That just exhausts the mind. Makes the mind very tense, and then the mind eventually will explode. It will, it's like a dog which you discipline so much that every moment is just waiting for the next order. Eventually it will turn around and bite somebody because it's too tense. It's not natural. So, like this with the mind also, we have to work with the mind. This is why we talk about taming the mind, taming it in a soft, friendly way. I mean, yes, we have to be firm. No nonsense here, mind. Behave yourself. But at the same time, we have to be sympathetic towards its problems, and to get the mind to want to cooperate. This is the important thing. If the mind, as I said at the beginning, if the mind really enjoys doing something, you don't have to force it. And if you think of any activity which you do that you really enjoy, like, Shuki playing his saxophone, he doesn't have to, force himself to do it. He loves doing it. He loves to play music, so he plays, and it gives him joy. And likewise, people enjoy reading, or they enjoy walking, or they enjoy, jigsaw puzzles or crossword puzzles and so forth. And even though they put effort into it, it doesn't seem like effort because the mind is happy. So really, to become a skilled meditator, we need to learn how to encourage the mind to enjoy actually being disciplined, and to enjoy the idea of how nice it would be if we could have a mind that was more peaceful and more centered, more focused. And because reminding ourselves when the mind does become like that, even if only for a short time, how pleasant that was. So in this way, we have to work with the mind to get the mind to want to cooperate, to want to do this, so that there's not an inner conflict. Because while there is a conflict, in the beginning, as with most things, we do want to do it, but we don't. But after a while, if there is still a conflict, then we should really work out what's the problem here. Because, as I say, anything that we do with our heart as well as our head is easy, even if outwardly it looks like very difficult. Other people look and say, wow, how can you do that? So difficult. But for the person doing it, it's not difficult because the difficulties are irrelevant, because there's a joy in doing it. So likewise, learning how to become the masters of our own mind, it's not easy because the mind rebels. And so either we can beat it into submission and have a very unhappy mind, but still, it will do what we tell it. Or we can encourage it to recognize the benefits of being well tamed, and how then we can train the mind. So this is by learning to use the natural resources of the mind. The mind by its nature can be quiet and it can be focused. We are not trying to make it go into strange, strange, as I say, weird yoga poses of the mind. The good yoga poses, the genuine yoga poses, go with the body and just stretch it. And so likewise we are working with the mind, but just stretching it. And then the mind becomes relaxed, flexible, supple, workable, instead of being hard and obdurate and difficult. But it's all part of... I'm not answering any questions, by the way. We have to get through this whole text, which is a long text. I've given up on questions. Good. Or comments. we are trying to make our mind workable. We are trying to get the mind back to how it should be if we didn't mess it up along the way, which would be open and clear and calm and focused. That is how the mind should be. We're not changing the mind into something else. We are getting the mind back to how it would be if it worked well, if it was well functioning. So therefore it's very important not to try to alter the mind in the sense of being artificial, but just to work back towards, as I say, like water. If you leave it alone, then it will settle of itself and clear. So good concentration is like that. Just allows, we don't try to settle the mind. We just give the mind an object and the mind will settle of itself. So this is the point with meditation, that we are developing this quality of recognizing. The important thing to recognize, first of all, is that our ordinary conceptual mind, our thinking mind, does not meditate. Right? The thinking mind is not what is meditated. It's another quality of the mind, our mindfulness, our awareness. That is what is being developed. That is what's meditated. The thinking mind just carries on and eventually calms down, but it's not the thinking mind we're using when we meditate. So we don't have to alter that. We don't have to change our mind. Do you understand? We are not using our thinking mind to meditate. This is why, if we are watching the breath, it's not the thinking mind that's watching the breath. It is not the thinking mind that is watching the breath, and therefore we don't have to try to alter the thinking mind. The thinking mind, as our awareness, as our mindfulness becomes stronger, then the moments of mindfulness will be greater. The moments of mental discursiveness will become less, because according to Buddhist psychology, we can only have one mental moment at a time. So therefore, even though they go so fast that we can't divide them, but the point is that the more moments of concentration we have, discursiveness we have. That's why we don't have to alter the mind. As we become more aware, more conscious, naturally the background chatter will begin to die down. We don't have to force it. So the more concentrated the mind, the more silent the background noise becomes. We don't need to turn down the volume. It turns itself off. So therefore he says that, that the highest concentration is not to alter the mind. We're not dealing with the law, with the surface mind. We don't need to change that. All we need at this point is just to develop our powers of staying one-pointedly on one object. But not with a tense mind, I repeat, with a very open spacious mind, very spacious, feeling of being relaxed, not that it's all tight, but very open and relaxed, but at the same time, the attention very focused. Then the rest happens of itself automatically. We don't have to do anything. So this is the point I think that he's trying to make here, is that we don't have to change the mind. We don't have to try to artificially alter it in any way. The mind will take care of itself if we just hone our attention within a very relaxed, open, spacious sense of being. And so really it just needs patience and perseverance. The actual principle is very, very simple. The main problem is that our mind, likes to chatter away, and then we get fascinated again by the chatter and swept along. So we have to be, like with a very naughty, fractious child, be a little firm, but not get caught up in arguing with our discursive mind. This is very important. Let it scream and chatter in the background, because in the foreground we have our object of meditation which we are focused on. And so as we ignore the background noise of itself, it begins to calm down because nobody's interested. Coming up with all sorts of fascinating thoughts. And so then after a while, and if we ignore it, really it's true, the mind likes to have attention, and if we don't give it attention, after a while it just gets bored, now what the hell, and quietens down. Curls up, goes to sleep. So this is the point with meditation, is just to take it very easily, step by step, and not try to make, even while one is sitting, one should sit, one should sit nicely, of course, but still not trying to make the mind kind of contrived. It's a very natural, not big thing about, now I'm going to meditate. Right, I'm a meditator, but just to sit and sit nicely, and then just bring the focus to whatever you like, nothing special. Just like when we're reading a book, we don't think, no, now I'm a reader. Wow, I can read. You just read a book because reading a book. So we just sit down and look at the mind because we're sitting down looking at the mind. Big deal. Also, this one on wisdom is actually something which we have already dealt with on a number of occasions above, and someone's going to say, why is Athisha still saying this? The supreme wisdom is not to grasp onto anything as the self. So we did the supreme understanding is to realize the meaning of selflessness, and then the supreme remedy is to know that nothing has self-nature. Now we have the supreme wisdom is not to grasp onto anything as the self. Yes, so every time he uses slightly different words, but always the idea is this idea that we make something into, as we were explaining this morning, into something solid and real and self-existent from its own side. I think Athisha says this again and again in various ways, because from the point of view of Buddhist wisdom and attainment, this is the crucial point. Both from the point of view of, as an individual, our belief that we really are a self-existent, enduring, changeless I at the center, and that likewise everything outside also are very separate and discrete and enduring and solid and real, just how we perceive them to be. And so again and again and again, it comes back to the same point: things are not how we perceive them. And because we perceive things as something very solid and real and enduring that we have to relate to ourselves and others, this creates all our problems. Because, as we said before, again and again, those things which appear to this seeming I as pleasurable, we reach out for, we grasp, we hold on to, we're attached to. And those things which seem to be so real and existent outside of this real existent me, which appear as if they are a cause of pain to us in any way, then we react with aversion, with anger, with hatred, and we push them away. So we spend our whole life caught between pleasure and pain, attracting pleasure, warding off pain. And this creates a lot of problems. It causes a lot of problems for ourselves, causes a lot of problems for other people. And it's all based on the fact that we don't see things as they really are. And so there are two things always going on. One is that on a relative level, we are trying to basically become nicer people. Right? We are trying to cultivate kindness, generosity, patience, loving kindness, compassion. We are trying to live in this world more peacefully, thinking of others' happiness, apart from only thinking of our own happiness. If people are difficult to us, trying to deal with that skillfully so as not to make more problems all around, and so forth. We are, in fact, trying to make a more peaceful, kinder, and more beneficial self. So that is on the relative level, on our conventional truth, that we are taking our ego along on the path, and so we want a happy little ego. Right? We want a sense that, this self that we are having to walk on the path with, because we cannot actually completely drop the self till we are at a very advanced level, that this self is a helpful self and not a detrimental one which causes problems for themselves and on the spiritual path and for other people. So on the relative conventional level, we are trying to develop good qualities which bring us closer to our true nature, and at the same time to clear away, recognize and clear and transform those negative qualities which are not inherent to our nature but are badly learned habitual patterns which we need to eradicate eventually and to transform, which can happen because it is not part of our inherent nature. We are not naturally bad. We are all really very, very naturally good. And so we have to therefore work to come back to our innate goodness. So that is still all on a very conventional level. But at the same time, there is this other thing happening, which is to try to help us to understand the ultimate nature of reality, which is to open us up to how things really are. Always underlying everything is how things seem with our deluded perception, and how things really are if only we had the eye of wisdom. So these two things are developing at the same time. As I said, they're like the wings of a bird in a way also, because along with this understanding of wisdom comes the cultivation of all these very positive qualities which we need in this world. But wisdom is something which we can think about it. Like we talk a lot in Athisha is again and again talking about a lack of self-existence, a lack of self-being, that we are not who we think we are. Others are not who they appear to be. That actually we are so much more than what we think, as well as so much less. I mean, the problem is that we identify with all the wrong things. There's nothing wrong with thinking, I am so-and-so, and I'm male or I'm female, and I'm an engineer or I'm a doctor, or, I'm a house decorator or whatever you are. There's nothing wrong with thinking, I belong to this religion, this race, this nation. We need that to live in this world. The problem comes when we believe it. And when we identify with that only, thinking this is who I truly am, and not recognizing that, yes, that is there, but that is something which is very impermanent, always changing, and beyond that is something so much more that we haven't recognized. This is why wisdom and compassion go together. Because as one really begins to see our genuine nature, and one looks at everybody around and oneself also, and how trapped we are in not understanding the real situation, who we truly are. It's so sad. We have this incredible potential. We all have Buddha nature, and we don't know. We think we're something ordinary. We think we're something, flawed. We don't recognize. The traditional explanation is of a beggar who lives in a hovel, in just a very poor hut. And underneath the ground in his hut, there is this huge treasure buried. But he doesn't know. So he goes out every day and he earns a few coins, and he's so happy he's got a little bit enough for the next meal. And all the time he's a multimillionaire. But he doesn't know. Then that's very sad. And so that's our situation. That we all have this great treasure within us, but we think we're poor. But we can only get to this treasure when we stop identifying with what we are not. This is why there's all this emphasis on no self, no self, no self. It doesn't mean we don't exist. It means that we should stop identifying so strongly with our present personality, our present... next lifetime when you get reborn as Palestinians, you are going to be glad that you work for peace in this lifetime. And all those people who are thought of as being enemies are going to be your nearest and dearest. And those people who now are your nearest and dearest, you will think of as your enemies. It happens like that. So, you better discover right now that you're not who you think you are. And so it's all genuine spiritual traditions. Genuine spiritual traditions have understood that what is blocking us from recognizing our innate divinity, however you want to call it, is this idea of clinging to the small self. No, nobody is as relentless about it as the Buddhists, but all genuine spiritual teachings understand that something else has to take place. I mean, as St. Paul said in one of his letters, it is not I that act, but Christ that acts in me. And that's what we're talking about. Dropping the sense of the little self, the little ego, and something so much greater taking place. This primordial awareness which is luminous. Luminous clarity. We wake up. So the talk about no self, no self, no self is not in the least bit negative. It's really very positive. We are trying to clear away so that we can see clearly our true nature, which is so beyond thought, literally. And when we awaken to that is wisdom. Because then we wake up and we see things as they really are. Of course, we probably fall back to sleep again. But that initial waking up is considered very important in all Buddhist traditions. That first glimpse of a reality beyond our ordinary, everyday, conceptual, conventional mind. That for a moment the clouds open, we see the sky. Then one understands, yes, or then you start working, then it has to be that we start really trying to get glimpse after glimpse after glimpse. And make those glimpses longer and more continuous. Yes, that's when the real work starts. But nonetheless, that first initial breakthrough is very important, because then one recognizes that there is something genuine, and what we are seeing is a counterfeit almost. So far from seeming like very negative, all this talk about no self and emptiness and all this, actually it's dealing with really opening up to something which is literally beyond words and beyond thought. And far from repudiating the world suddenly comes alive in all its intelligence, in a way that we normally, with our small, limited, conventional thinking, cannot imagine. This is why Milarepa went off into his cave and lived on nettles and turned green. Because he was in search of the infinite. But in the meantime, be kind, Be patient, be generous, really care about others, and laugh. I have always said that a sense of humor is the seventh paramita. We take ourselves too seriously. You know, a sense of humor is a very good thing to have. Don't take ourselves too seriously. Yes, sincerely. We are sincere, but not too serious. So, where the Supreme Spiritual Teacher is the one who exposes our hidden flaws, and the Supreme Instruction is the one that helps us to strike at those flaws. So, yes. So, of course, in anything that we want to learn, it's no good having a teacher who only praises us and never points out anything that we're doing wrong. Again, it's like if we are learning a musical instrument, or if we're learning a sport, or if you have a trainer at a gymnasium, or anything, any skill that we want to acquire, we expect our teachers to point out our faults. That's why we need a teacher. Because otherwise we could just read it all in an instruction book or Google it. But what we need is an actual person to show us, no, you're doing that, you're not doing that right. You know, you're not putting your fingers have to go like this, not like that. And whatever skill we're trying to learn, we need someone who knows much better than we do, who can see how we're doing it wrong. As well as, of course, encouraging us when we do it right. I mean, we don't want someone who's endlessly criticizing and never, you know, encouraging us when it's fine. But more important is that they show us when we're not doing it properly. So when it comes to a spiritual teacher, who is in the Kadampa tradition is called Agewi Shenyen. That is our Kalyana Mitra, our good friend. That's what it literally means. It means a good friend. The good friend is one who points out to us what flaws we have in our character that need to be looked at. Because very often we can see some things, but other things are glaring and we just don't see it. So a good teacher is like a mirror for us, pointing out where our weaknesses are, where the flaws are in our nature. Because without that, it's very hard for us to always see where we're going wrong. Nowadays, of course, it is much more difficult to have that kind of relationship with teachers. You know, if you do have a teacher who you can talk with and communicate with, you're already very, very fortunate. Because, you know, nowadays, certainly so many lamas are running around the world continually, zap, zap, zap. And, you know, the chance of people actually getting to sit down and talk with them about their practice, even if they're their students, is really quite minimal. Even in India, you know, the lamas are so busy, they've got so many projects on, and then they're always running all over the place, and then they have if they're popular, they have so many students. And so if you have a teacher who is quite well known, the chances of getting more than, 5 minutes is very unlikely. And so it's actually quite difficult now to have a teacher that you can really sit down and talk with, and who has the time to hear what your problems are, and who knows you well enough to be able to point out your faults. I mean, if the lamas only see you when you're sitting there all nice and pious, in his Dharma talk, how can he know what you're really like? Very hard. So if you are in a situation where you do have a teacher who really is there with you and gets to know you and can help you, then that is a wonderful blessing, actually. And of course, as with if you're learning an instrument, you don't need to have, the very, very top professional players teaching you. Sometimes somebody who is just very proficient, but not, a superstar, is actually better. And as long as they have, they have the qualities of having practiced for a long time and basically, being very clear about what is Dharma, what is not Dharma, provided they have a good and compassionate heart, and their motivation really is for benefiting others and, propagating Dharma, that is more than enough. I mean, somehow people imagine that if only they could find, the teacher sitting on a 1,000-petal lotus radiating lights, that they would just look at them and zap, they've got it. But it isn't like that. I mean, even if the Buddha himself was sitting here, all he could say is, practice. What could he say? He can't. I mean, if he could do it for us, he would, but he can't, All he can say is, look, this is what you have to do, now go away and do it. So for that, you don't need a Buddha on a 1,000-petal lotus. Sometimes it's much better to have somebody who just has accomplishments but is not anybody super, super high, because then they understand just so much better. And we can talk to them. And they know what we're talking about. So the important thing is to have somebody that you can turn to and who can understand us enough that when we are going astray, or when we have problems which we are obviously not dealing with, that they can point these out to us. This is very, very helpful, of course, in any skill. You have a teacher. We know that. So also for the Dharma, you need teachers. And in Israel you have teachers. You do. And so the point is therefore to make use of that on one hand, and also at the same time to practice. The teacher cannot do it for us, but what they can do is to help guide us so that we do things properly and we don't waste time by doing things wrong. And beyond that, it's up to us. So then also the supreme instruction is one that strikes at those flaws. So again, we need, if we, for example, are very short-tempered, if we get angry very easily, if we, if that root of anger is the strongest in our mind stream, we need teachings which deal with that. Such as, learning loving kindness and patience and many meditations which can help deal with that particular root. So if we are angry but generous, we don't need so much instructions on how to be generous, because we already know that bit. But what we need is something which will strike at our particular problem, whatever that problem may be. And everyone has different problems. A skillful teaching will be one which will help us to deal with that particular problem, that particular flaw in our personality. So again, a skillful teacher could help us to find the kind of practice which speaks most to our difficulties. Because it's important that our nature becomes well balanced. And there are many, many, many practices, and different practices are useful for different people. It's not that there's a universal practice. I mean, we usually start by getting everybody, concentrating on the breath or on the image of the Buddha, etc., just as a general, just to get the mind tamed. But then after that, there is so many different practices, and different people respond to different approaches and different techniques depending on their own personality and their own needs. So therefore, it's important especially to hear and think about and practice those instructions which especially hit at our weak points. As I say, it's like going to a gymnasium. If you have strong arms but flabby legs, then you will work mostly on machines which strengthen legs. You don't need to keep strengthening your arms and neglecting the legs, because then you'll have extremely super arms and fall over on your face because your legs are so flabby. So you need to balance. Right? The trainer, if he's a good trainer, will immediately look at you and tell you what's wrong. And you don't resent that, being told, what's wrong with you. That's why you've got a trainer. Because the trainer can immediately look and see what's wrong and then give you exercises to counterbalance that and strengthen the weaknesses. I mean, this is obvious. So likewise, a skilled teacher will be able to see, if they know the student, they can see where are their strong points, where are their weak points, and especially encourage them to look at their weak points and then use some practice and study which will direct them at their weak points in order to overcome them and transform them. So therefore, definitely one should not be offended by criticism. And even in the world, when people criticize us, rather than becoming defensive and angry, we should look at what they're saying and say, is it true? Are they pointing out to us some fault in ourselves which we haven't perhaps noticed? In which case we are grateful. They have become our teacher. And if when we have criticism, we look and we don't see that is a fault actually, honestly looking, and we can't see how they projected that onto us, we have many faults, but maybe not that one, then we don't have to worry, we just drop it. So, no, not that one, try another. Next time mention about so-and-so, then that will hit. So it's very important to have a very clear and balanced understanding of our conventional nature, what work needs to be done. And so that is our path, is dealing with what needs to be done and doing it. And so therefore, as he's saying, you know, the teacher who shows us what work needs to be done is the best teacher. And the instruction for helping us to deal with those problems is the best instruction. I mean, it's pretty obvious. So then he says the supreme companions are mindfulness and alertness. So again, we're back to this question of mindfulness. It means, I mean, nowadays, of course, mindfulness has become a big catchword everywhere, in business, in psychology, in, you know, for stress relief and lowering your cholesterol, and for everything, you know, you learn to be mindful. And basically it's regarded nowadays, the way it's taught is that it means being present in the moment. So that what we are doing, what we know what we are doing while we are doing it, so that we are present. And this is an important quality of mindfulness, but it's not the only thing. From a Buddhist perspective, that's only one aspect of mindfulness. In fact, Buddhism doesn't just talk about mindfulness, it talks about right mindfulness. I mean, if one were a burglar about to enter a house or to open up a safe where there are people in the rooms above, then one is very mindful, right? One moves, opens up the window very, very quietly, carefully. One enters a room, one moves very, very carefully. And one is taking what one wants to take very silently. It's all very mindful. But from a Buddhist perspective, it's not right mindfulness. Because right mindfulness is always connected with positive states of mind. And so part of the practice of mindfulness is that we are conscious of our states of mind and we are checking to make sure that they are positive states and not negative states. And if they are negative, we change them. So this quality of checking up is part of what is called alertness. This word alertness doesn't really have any translation into English. In Tibetan it's called sheshin. And it goes along with a trempa, which is mindfulness. So it's trenche, probably. Here. Trenche. Trenpa dan sheshin, yeah. So we are trying to become more conscious, more present. And at the same time, there is this aspect of our mind which kind of looks to see how the mind is getting on. During meditation, during strict sitting meditation, then this quality of what he is calling here alertness, some people say introspection, some people say clear comprehension, whatever we call it, this sheshin, quality of the mind. While we are sitting in meditation, we are developing mindfulness. Mindfulness of the breath, mindfulness of the mental stream, mindfulness of a pebble, mindfulness of a Buddha image, whatever. We're developing mindfulness, awareness. And at that time, this alertness quality of the mind looks up from time to time, perks up, looks, sees. Is the mind distracted? We've forgotten to be mindful. We're off, having our summer holidays in wherever we're having our summer holidays. Or has the mind sunk? So we are in this nice, pleasant samadhi of sleep. In either case, this quality of alertness notices what's happening in the mind. Is it fallen to either extreme? And it rectifies it. If the mind is very distracted, then it brings it firmly back to the object. If the mind is sinking, then it again tries to vivify the mind, brighten the mind, and so forth. So this is the quality that it's looking during formal meditation to make sure that our mindfulness is clear and steady and balanced. Now during the day, while we are cultivating mindfulness in daily life, of course at that time what the alertness is doing, what this watching, it's not there the whole time. It just looks, and when it sees something which needs adjusting, it adjusts it, then it subsides again. And then after a time, it will come back up and look again. But it doesn't keep disturbing the mind. It doesn't make the mind all tense. Just from time to time, it checks up. It checks up. So during the day, we are attempting to be more conscious. The Buddha said, when we are standing, we know we are standing. When we are sitting, we know we are sitting. When we are walking, we know we are walking. When we are lying down, we know we are lying down. In other words, step number 1 is to get in contact with our bodily postures. This is the easiest thing, because the body is the way we experience it at the beginning is fairly gross. It gets more and more subtle as we become more and more in contact with the energies of the body. But at the beginning, step number 1 is just dealing with our basic 4 postures: standing, walking, sitting, lying down. And so this catches our attention. When we're walking, we can experience walking. Normally when we're walking, we're thinking 1,000 other things, not walking. Now we are just going to bring the attention to the experience of movement. Or if we are sitting, then we are sitting. And then whatever we are doing, there's that quality of knowing as much as possible what we are doing while we're doing it. And then gradually that develops also into the knowing about the mind. Now, especially while knowing about the mind, but also with the postures, again, this checking quality of the mind is seeing what's going on. So if we are our posture, for example, is not good, then we can sit properly, we can stand properly. But especially, and what it really is interested in, is what's going on in our mind. So while we're watching the mind, we're more conscious of what's happening in the mind. The Sheshin checks it. Is it positive or negative? And if it's negative, then again, we recognize it, we can name it. Very short, as I say, anger, envy, greed. Then we can either just drop it, or we can work with it to transform it. If it is a positive quality in the mind, then we can encourage it. If the mind is just neutral, not positive or negative, we note it. So it's this ability to bring our everything which we do in our day in conformity with the path, and it's developing the mind the whole day. Because if we think that sitting for half an hour in the morning and then the rest of the mind is running all over the place, that we are actually ever going to learn to meditate, we are fooling ourselves. It's not going to work. We have to be in training with our mind as much as we can remember during the day. So this is why we were talking about mindfulness spells. And anything that we can think of to do which will remind us. You know, the word for mindfulness, both in Sanskrit and in Tibetan, is the ordinary word to remember. The word to remember. Nga payula dringando. I'm remembering my homeland. It's ordinary colloquial Tibetan. Trempa just means to remember. And so its direct enemy is that we forget. Actually, if I ask you now to be mindful of your posture, of your body in this moment, you can do it. You suddenly become very conscious of the body and the energies in the body. If one says, well, be mindful of your hand, then immediately your attention goes to the hand, you begin to feel the blood pulsing through the hand, the energy in the hand. Not difficult, anybody can do that. The problem is we don't remember. We forget. And we get carried away by our mind stream and we forget to remember. So this again is why this quality of alertness or sheshin is helpful if we develop it, because if it pops up, then it can see that, look, mindfulness, where's it gone? You know, and bring it back. The Buddha said that this is the one path to liberation. In Tantra, for those of you who are practicing, people are practicing here? So in Tantra, the way they do it is by the self-generation of oneself as the Buddha or Bodhisattva, the deity, which one carries with one throughout the day. Right? It's not just when you're sitting down on your cushion meditating that, for example, one sees oneself as as the Buddha here, you know. Then it's not just when you're meditating that you would see yourself as the Buddha or as Chenrezig or whoever. Tara. But at the end, when all the visualization has been dissolved back into emptiness, into primal level of the mind, then again one appears as the deity. And all sound is mantra, all thoughts are the play of the wisdom mind of the deity. And all beings become the deity. often in Chenrezig or Tara practice, then all males become Chenrezig, all females become Tara, but however you want to see it. But the point is that then, if you're the deity, well, that changes everything, doesn't it? And this, if one does it seriously, we are serious. One has to understand that by seeing oneself as the deity, one is actually coming closer to how things really are than just seeing ourselves as an ordinary sentient being. For example, Sunma Eileen here is going to be meditating on Tara. Everybody know who Tara is? She is often she has 21 forms, but her two main ones. One is green, one is white, and she represents fearless compassion. And she is a very, very popular bodhisattva who in Tibetan Buddhism, who is practiced by all. Who is practiced by everybody, male, female, high, low, everybody does Tara. Our nuns do a Tara puja every morning. So if one is seeing oneself as Tara, so Sunma Eileen is going to sit down and see herself as Tara. She visualizes her body dissolving into light, and then in an instant she appears as Tara. But in the back of her mind is the thought, right, well, of course, really I'm Eileen, and now I'm going to pretend to be Tara. Right, now I'm going to be Tara, but of course, really I'm Eileen, but it's all right. And this is what we're thinking, right, I'm me, but I'm going to pretend to be this one now. And that, you see, that is our fundamental delusion. Because, of course, actually, we are Tara, pretending to be Eileen. And that's the point. So it's always in Vajrayana, it's called the pride of the deity, recognizing we are the deity, this is who we really are, and we've mistaken. This is our enduring identity. This other identity we've taken on for this lifetime is just very impermanent. We have at the most 100 years, and then we're something else. But Tara, nature, endures forever. So the practice of seeing oneself as the deity throughout the day is very powerful, because then not only one's form is the deity, but one's mind is the deity. One's actions are the deity. And all other beings likewise are the deity. It's not that it's just I am Tara and everybody else is just ordinary funky sentient beings. All beings are Tara. Isn't that wonderful? They might manifest in different ways, but every being that we see is Tara. Only they don't know it. And so this is the Vajrayana way of maintaining mindfulness. All sounds, pleasing sounds, disturbing sounds, all sounds are her mantra. Om tare tu re swaha. All thoughts, high thoughts, low thoughts, wise thoughts, stupid thoughts, all just the play of her wisdom mind. They're all empty in their nature. So this is the tantric way of coming back to who we really are. It reminds us the whole time that we are, yes, we are playing our role, that we have been assigned in this lifetime, but it's not who we really are. We're something so much more. We are the wisdom mind manifesting in the form of a deity. Do you understand? So this is why it is considered in a tantra, apart from also the, manipulation of the inner energies and so forth, that tantra is a very fast path, because it takes the fruit of the path, which is our Buddhahood, and takes it to use it as the path. Rather than thinking of ourselves as flawed sentient beings walking along until finally we become a Buddha, we recognize we are all actually innately Buddha, if only we understood that, realized that. So then we take that fruit, that with the goal which we are striving, and use it as the actual path. And so in this way, if we do it sincerely, it very quickly transforms our consciousness, because we're trying to see things as they really are and not as we see them normally with our deluded perception. So however we practice, the fundamental point which he's saying here is to have as our companions, in other words, what accompanies us on the path the whole time, whatever our path, is the ability to be aware. So we can start with small things. The Buddha suggested, the 4 fundamental postures of the body as a start. We could also take actions which we do every day, and normally we do very mindlessly, and make the determination to do them mindfully. Anything, drinking, every time you drink a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, make the inner commitment to do so, being as conscious as possible. Or cleaning your teeth, brushing your hair. If you walk to work, then when you're walking, use that as a meditation. Any especially simple actions which we do, normally automatically and as an excuse for thinking something else while we're doing it, now we can use that as the foundation for a practice. And in itself, again, as I say, it's very easy, we can say, all right, when when I comb my hair, I'm going to comb it and be conscious I'm combing it. And in itself, that is very simple. The main problem is, there are 2 main problems. First main problem is that we're doing this, and we're aware that we're combing our hair or cleaning our teeth or drinking tea or whatever. And then the mind says, oh yes, look, I am mindfully combing my hair. Well, now look, it's easy to comb your hair mindfully. Look, I'm being really very mindful. I don't know why people think mindfulness is difficult, because here I am combing my hair, and I know I'm combing my hair, and blah, 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 blah. I wonder if it needs tinting. And so this is the main problem, that, it's in the beginning it's difficult to maintain mindfulness without the conceptual mind jumping in there and giving its commentary. But again, it's a matter of practice, you know, and relaxing and just, yes, we heard that now, just go back to combing the hair, right? And the other thing, of course, is that the first 1 or 2 times we do it and we say, oh yes, this is good, this is nice, you know, and then we forget completely next time. Even though we know it was good and we could do it and it was fine and that was nice, but, you know, we don't keep it going. We forget. We forget because the mind's habit is not to be present. The ego, the self itself, cannot be present. The ego thrives in the past and in the future. Just watch your mind and we see how it is not going to be here. It's always going to be in the past or in the future or running around the present, commenting. But just settled, observing, without comment. Can't do it. Another level of the mind comes in that can do it. In fact, that's all it can do, is be present, which is mindfulness. We can only be mindful of the past and the future if we look at the mind knowingly that this is, we are thinking now in the past or we are planning in the future. That we can be mindful of. But then we know that's what we're doing. But when the mind itself just gets carried away in the past and the future without us being even conscious that's what we're doing, then that is not mindfulness. Right? So the ego is always going to live anywhere except now. And so therefore mindfulness is such a brilliant way of really learning how to live without the ego always being there the whole time. And therefore the mind feels very rested, actually, cleaned. Even if we only stay mindful for a short time, it's a tremendous relaxation for the mind. Just to be present with what we're doing, without commenting, without judging. I mean, judging only as far as to make sure that if we are mindful of the mind, that the mind is in a very positive state of mind. But when we are training just to learn how to be present, we just need to allow our minds to relax and just bring the focus, as in our meditation, just bring the focus to the forefront of the mind. It's very easy, and one feels the whole shift in focus. The minute we are really focused on the present, it's like everything comes into, like the lens of a camera, suddenly becomes very sharp. Because we are using a more subtle level of the mind. The gross level of the mind is our ordinary, the waves of our conceptual thinking running along. Mindfulness is a more subtle level. Of course, it's all mind, but it's a more subtle level of the mind. So therefore, it's much sharper. Much clearer. But the ego sees it as a threat, which it is to the ego, and therefore will do everything it can to get in the way again. And this is why it needs practice. We are in the habit of being unmindful. And to develop the the quality of being present, of knowing what is happening at the time of happening, with as least commentary as possible. Because then also we see everything fresh. Normally when we see things, the mind immediately compares it with what it's seen before and evaluates it according to its previous experience. We do it so automatically we're not even conscious of it. And mostly what we see, what we hear, what we taste, what we touch can be put into compartments of received experiences from the past, so that we immediately decide automatically, it seems, we like it, we don't like it, this is better, this is not so good, etc., etc. We don't see the thing in itself, we see our opinion. And this is why also as one gets older, time seems to speed up. As a child, every experience is new and vivid. And so therefore, time, one day seems to go on forever. But as we get older and our mind just becomes acclimatized and habituated, so it seems like one day into the next day into another, all like the reel is speeding up. And this is actually a very bad sign. Because it shows that we are not living every moment anew. Our senses are dulled. So this quality of mindfulness actually brings back the vividness of our experience, so that in fact we do see each thing as if it was for the first time. I mean, even though, we can still evaluate and we like this and we don't like that, but still there is a more immediate relationship with what is happening. And we are also conscious that these things are just being received through the senses and they are being programmed. It's like it's a bit like being in a room which is empty and all the windows and doors are open, so the winds are blowing through, but nothing is obstructing it. So the mind is very open and empty and spacious and aware, without being cluttered with lots of furniture and adornments. It's just very things coming in and going out without getting trapped. So it's a very balanced, open, spacious mind. Very clear. Colors appear clearer. Sights appear clearer. Sounds appear clearer. Everything is much more vivid.
Doesn't the ego benefits from it? Why did you say that the ego is threatened by mindfulness?
Because the ego cannot live in the present moment. It can comment on the present moment, but it cannot live silently in the present moment. What lives silently in the present moment is our awareness. Our awareness is not part of the ego. So therefore, as our mind becomes more and more habituated to being in a state of clear awareness, the ego begins to diminish. And so therefore the ego recognizes that this is part of its dissolution process, and therefore it comes up with everything it can to distract us, including and especially the fact that it keeps trying to make us forget by bringing up something else which will take us away from remembering to remember.
Why the ego doesn't like that we are in the present moment?
Because when we are in the present moment, there's no ego. So if we stayed always in the present moment, that's the death of the ego. So of course, even though ultimately the ego has never existed from the very beginning, right? So you're not killing. We're dissolving something which from the very beginning has just been a fabrication of our ignorance. But nonetheless, the habitual tendencies of the mind resist letting go. And this is why we have to really make a commitment. This is why people do retreats. This is why people go into group retreats. It's to try to retrain our minds a bit, so that we can even just get a taste, so that we can understand what it is we need to do. It's very hard sometimes to just jump straight in to the practice if one hasn't got some kind of a slight foundation at least, even if it's only a week-long retreat or 10-day retreat. It gives a kind of idea, a taste of what the mind could do if it only was trained properly. And how nice that would be. People come out even of 10-day, Vipassana retreats. I mean, they're crying and laughing at the same time. And, they think, wow, how come I never knew about this before? They're so amazed that their mind can actually do it. Wow! Everybody else, of course, is sitting in samadhi. But me, I have my troublesome mind. I'm the only one that has ever had a problem with their minds, but here I am. But then as the mind begins to settle and move into deeper levels, people recognize that actually they can do it. Wow. Huh. And so then, when they come out, they feel such a confidence that they can walk the path. Yes, it's possible. Even me, I could do it. If I put enough effort into it, I can do it. So this is, but then so often after that, then people just plunk again, because they're not maintaining that momentum. And this, of course, is the problem, to keep maintaining it and really try to cultivate awareness in our daily life as much as possible in order to really transform our mind. The beauty of it is that our mind can be transformed, because the way it's usually acting out is not part of its true nature. So, we all of us can walk the path, but nobody can walk it for us. That's the main problem. Otherwise, you could hire someone to do it for you and dedicate the merit in our direction, and that would be enough. So we all have to work as hard as we can, in a happy way, not stressing ourselves out. But, yeah. This is why it's very important to recognize that of course the path of transforming our mind, recognizing our true nature and so on forth is extremely important. But all these other things are also important, like cultivating kindness and generosity and patience and things like this. These are also, they go along, it's a package deal. You know, it's all part of it. But all of these qualities, every one of them, we have to make efforts to cultivate them. Otherwise it all stays up in our head. You know, we know all the definitions and we know the various subcategories and so forth. But it's all stuck up here, it doesn't go down here. And until it comes down into the center of our being, nothing really transforms. It's all just a very interesting intellectual exercise. And so this is why we need our daily life. Because our daily life gives us the opportunity to try again and again and again and again, until finally it becomes spontaneous. Until finally we've got it. Because all of these qualities are who we really are. This is what I'm trying to express, that our negative qualities are not our true nature. Our positive qualities are our true nature. So therefore, however much we are habituated to negative aspects of our personality, they are not inherent within us. They can be changed. All of it can be changed. And you know, the path is about transformation. And if we want to have a meaning to our life, that's what it is. That we have this life in which to transform. Because only that way are we really going to be of benefit to ourselves and of benefit to others on a deeper level. We have to transform. We cannot start worrying about changing other people. We cannot change other people. We have a hard enough time trying to change ourselves. But that is the only person that we really can effectively change. It's not a matter of changing. Change yourself, change the world. I mean, that's where it's at. As long as we are inside in conflict, how can we talk about peace? As long as inside we have even the idea, well, I want peace, but those people out there don't want peace. And so immediately we're back to us and them. We're the goodies, they're not there, the baddies. Then where is there going to be peace? So each one of us, you know, we are on a journey. And as long as we keep walking, however long it takes, it's worthwhile. It's when we just stop and sit down and say, that's it, I can't go. Or we go backwards. You know, His Holiness has this saying, which I'm sure some of you are seeing, about never give up. And they've even put it on T-shirts. But I don't have it with me, so I can't quote it. But it's very beautiful from some talk which he gave, which was about just keeping going no matter what obstacles are there, what difficulties we have. As long as we don't give up, it's okay. And so, I mean, for him, of course, he's also thinking in his mind Tibet. And, you know, how to bring peace to Tibet. Just as you are thinking how to bring peace to Israel. And the forces against it seem so heavy and so insurmountable. But never give up. Really believe that eventually truth will out. Eventually. You know, from the point of view of eternity, this is such a very small time. And the thing is, with our spiritual practice and with our aspirations and desires for a happy planet, a happy nation, a happy neighborhood, a happy family, a happy person, all of it depends on never giving up. And every step is a step forward, however long it takes. I mean, we have had many struggles also in the Tibetan tradition for females to be recognized, to be given the opportunities which for millennia they had been denied. And we weren't fighting with anyone, but we were going forward every time, creating opportunities, trying to move things slowly, slowly. And now things really are moving. Just when you think, oh, we give up, suddenly it's all happening. So many of the things which we have been working for 20, 30 years, suddenly it's happening. So truly, you know, we have to have that faith, we have to have that belief that finally, you know, the light is stronger than the dark. Even darkness is 1,000 years, you switch on the light, where's the darkness gone? So we always must be moving towards the light and not be afraid of the dark. In our practice and in our social engagements. Because ultimately, really, you know, when I was brought up as a spiritualist. I wasn't brought up really as a Christian, and I wasn't Jewish, but my mother was a spiritualist, which meant that every week we had seances in our house. And we would, one of our neighbors was a medium, so she would channel various people who had died. And it was a very small group of neighbors, and it was happening in our house, so we knew nothing was being faked. Anyway, I'm not talking about that, but what I'm talking about is that people would ask the spirits, you know, like somebody's having an operation next week, please help them, and, you know, are they going to be okay? And, you know, this one is doing an exam, will they pass? And this sort of thing. And at that time, I was about 7 or 8, 9 years old. But I already thought, you know, look, these spirits, they're on the other side. Maybe they have more of a clue than we do. Why don't we ask them something really important? So I said, is there a God? And they said, well, you know, we don't completely know. You know, we're just spirits. But the word around the spirit world is that God is not a person. God is not someone up there, you know, pulling the strings and judging. God is not a person. But ultimately, there is love and light and intelligence. And I thought, yeah, I'll buy that. And I think it's true. Ultimately, we are love and light and intelligence. Ultimately, the universe is love, is light, is intelligence. We should never forget that. However dark it may seem, ultimately, light, love, intelligence. maybe we end there for today, and dedication.
So thank you very much.
Wait, we have a prayer here.
Okay.
Yes, for who?
מורה נעלה וגדולה, אנו מפיצה את החוכמה של מסורת התרגול, וכל קצה תבל לאורכה ולאורכה, באמצעות הברכה המציעה בשלוש האבנים היקרות ובשלושת השורשים, ולפצעים לחיים ארוכים, ומצא את המוערים וקירוב וישיר.
תודה.